Welcome students. Hope all of you are fine. In continuation to my presentations on human reproduction, last time I gave you a presentation on development from zygote to embryo part first, and this is the second part of development from zygote to embryo. In the last presentation, I told you that as a result of fertilization, zygote was formed, and from zygote, uh, marula was formed, and from marula, blastula was formed, and as a result, blastocyst was formed. Now, after the formation of the blastocyst, there is a formation of one structure which is known as the placenta. And you know, the blastocyst is implanted in the internal lining of the uterus, which is known as endometrium, and implantation occurs after about 7 to 8 days of fertilization. And when implantation occurs, we can say that the pregnancy is established. And when pregnancy is established, a special tissue develops between the embryo and the uterus wall, and this structure is known as the placenta, and it is a temporary connection between the mother and the embryo. It means that after the implantation of the blastula or the blastocyst, what happens that there develops a temporary connection between the mother, that is a uterus wall, and the developing embryo, and that temporary connection is known as the placenta. And placenta is formed by both fetal as well as the maternal tissue. It means that placenta is formed by some of the part from the fetal portion and some part from the mother portion, that is the uterus of the mother. And after implantation, the chorionic villi of the blastocyst grow into the endometrium, and the endometrial tissue undergoes changes, and it is known as the decidua basilis. And placenta now consists of fetal part, the chorion, and the maternal part, decidua basilis. It means that when implantation occurs, the finger-like projections, they are known as the chorionic villi, they grow out of the blastocyst and they go into the endometrium. And when this happens, the endometrial tissue, that is the internal lining of the uterus, that tissue undergoes changes and they form the decidua basilis. And now we can say that placenta is formed of two parts. One part is contributed by the mother and the other part is contributed by the developing fetus or the embryo. And the fetal part which form the placenta, that is known as the chorion, and the portion which forms the placenta from the maternal part, that is known as the decidua basilis. It means both the chorion, which is from the fetal part, and the decidua basilis from the mother part, these two structures, they form the temporary structure between the mother and the fetus, and this temporary connection between the mother and the fetus, it is known as placenta. So placenta, it's a temporary connection, and the chorionic villi which come out of the blastocyst, they burrow deep into the endometrium and come in close contact with the maternal blood, and so this type of placenta is known as hemochorial placenta. It means to say that the chorionic villi of the blastocyst, they go deep into the endometrium to that point where it comes with the contact of the maternal blood. It means the maternal blood and the chorionic villi, they come in close contact with each other, and this type of placenta formation is known as hemochorial placenta. Hemo means blood, chorial means from the chorion side. So this is a hemochorial placenta in case of human beings, but there is no blending or mixing of blood of the mother and the embryo. Even if the chorionic villi, they go deep into the endometrium, they reach up to the maternal blood, but there is no mixing of blood of mother and the embryo. And this placenta, it supplies the fetus with everything it needs for development. Fetus exchanges respiratory gases, nutrients and excretory waste with the maternal blood through the membrane. I told you that this is a hemochorial placenta and it comes in contact with the maternal blood, and even then there is no mixing of blood of mother and embryo, because placenta supplies the fetus with everything it needs. It exchanges gases. It means oxygen goes inside the fetus and carbon dioxide comes out, and nutrients are also provided by the placenta, and excretory waste also come out through the placenta from the fetus to the mother and then outside. And these all exchanges, they are done through the membrane, and that is why there is no mixing of blood or anything else between the mother and the embryo. And placenta acts as an ultrafilter. It means that soluble inorganic and organic substances, hormones, antibodies against smallpox, measles, diphtheria, etc., they also pass from mother to fetus through placenta. It means that when the mother is pregnant, she has to be provided with antibodies against smallpox, measles and diphtheria, and these all small antibodies, they go to fetus through placenta. And so many other inorganic and organic substances and even hormones also, they also are provided from mother to fetus through placenta. So we can say that placenta acts as an ultrafilter. In addition to these functions, placenta also acts as an endocrine gland, and so you know endocrine gland secretes number of hormones. So placenta also acts as an endocrine gland and it secretes many hormones, and placenta secretes hormones as well as many proteins. For example, these human chorionic gonadotropin, which we call as HCG, and the second one is human placental lactogen, then estrogen, you know, then progesterone, you know, and one more hormone, that is relaxin. These 5 hormones and proteins, you can say, these are secreted by the placenta. So placenta also acts as the endocrine gland. And there is one hormone, that is human chorionic gonadotropin. This hormone is secreted by the placenta, but which portion? It is secreted by the chorion membrane of the embryo, and by maintaining the corpus luteum HGC, the human chorionic gonadotropin level, it keeps the level of the estrogen and the progesterone high, and so it prevents menstruation and further ovulation. And HCG, it comes from embryonic chorion and not the mother. So it is the hormone that is tested for in all the pregnancy tests. It means human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, it is secreted by which portion of the placenta? Chorion, and it is given by the chorion is portion of the fetus, and it is secreted by the chorion. And when human chorionic gonadotropin is secreted, and it maintains the corpus luteum, and so it keeps the level of estrogen and progesterone secreted by corpus luteum high, and so when level of HCG, estrogen and progesterone is high, and so it prevents menstruation, and so further ovulation does not take place. And HC is that hormone which is secreted only during pregnancy by the mother. So at the time of pregnancy test, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone is tested, and if it is present in the mother, it means the mother is pregnant. So this is the test, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, it is tested for the pregnancy tests. So the next hormone which is released during the pregnancy, by the placenta, that is relaxin. And this hormone relaxin, it is secreted at the end of the pregnancy, and it is secreted by placenta, and it is secreted to facilitate the childbirth by softening the connective tissue of pelvis, and it also dilates the cervix for the preparation for the delivery. It means this relaxin hormone, it is secreted at the end of the pregnancy, at the time of the delivery, and relaxin hormone, it softens the connective tissue of the pelvis and it dilates the cervix, and from where delivery is feasible, and it facilitates the delivery of the child at the end of the pregnancy of 9 months. So other hormones like HCG, HPL and relaxin, they are produced in women only during pregnancy, and these hormones, they are produced only during pregnancy and not otherwise. And moreover, estrogen and progesterone, they are also present in the body of the female, which are useful in different situations. Now placenta is a temporary connection, I told you. Then in addition to placenta, one more structure is developed in the pregnancy stage, which is called as the umbilical cord. It is a long and thick cord which runs between the fetus and the placenta, and umbilical cord is attached to the belly of the fetus on one side and to the placenta on the other side, and it contains the blood vessels taking fetal blood to and fro the placenta. It means that in addition to placenta, one more structure is present, that is known as the umbilical cord. And umbilical cord, it is a long and thick cord which runs between the fetus and the placenta. And you know that placenta is attached to uterus, and umbilical cord, it is attached to the belly of the fetus on one side and to the placenta on the other side. It means umbilical cord is between the fetus and the placenta. Placenta is attached to uterus and umbilical cord is attached to the fetus on one side and placenta on other side. And what is the function of umbilical cord? It contains the blood vessels which take blood from fetus to mother and from mother to fetus. So it means that if we start from the embryo side or fetus side, first comes the umbilical cord, then comes the placenta which is joined to the uterus wall. So it means that umbilical cord, it's also present in addition to placenta, and umbilical cord, it contains the blood vessels which takes the blood from mother to fetus and from fetus to mother. This is a diagram which shows the position of the umbilical cord and the embryo. So this is the uterus, okay, so this is cervix, or this is embryo or the fetus, you can say, in early stages. Then this is umbilical cord which is attached on one side to the navel point or the belly of the fetus, and to other side this is placenta, and this is the wall of the uterus, and these are the chorionic villi, so which form the portion of the placenta. So this diagram shows the different parts of the umbilical cord and the placenta and how they are attached with the embryo. So this is the umbilical cord. Then now we have placenta, we have umbilical cord, and the position where they are present. Now we come to the embryo. So in early stages, the embryo is known as the fetus, and fetus is covered by the membranes, and those membranes which cover the fetus, they are known as the extra embryonic membranes because they are present outside the embryo or outside the fetus. The outer cells of blastocyst, the outer cells of blastocyst are known as the trophoblast, and these trophoblasts, they form the extra embryonic or fetal membranes, and there are such 4 extra embryonic membranes. And first is known as the amnion. It is the inner membrane which surrounds the embryo closely. and between the amnion and the embryo there is present a amniotic cavity, and this amniotic cavity, it contains the amniotic fluid, and this fluid prevents the desiccation of embryo and functions as a shock absorber. It means the first extraembryonic membrane or the fetal membrane is the amnion, and it is present very close to the embryo, and it is the innermost extraembryonic membrane which surrounds the embryo, and between the embryo and the amnion there is present a cavity which is known as the amniotic cavity, and in this amniotic cavity is present the amniotic fluid. And what is the function of the amniotic fluid? Amniotic fluid, it acts as a shock absorber. It means that the fetus or the embryo, it does not get injured because of the fluid, and moreover this amniotic fluid prevents the desiccation of embryo. It means the embryo is not wasted, it is not putrefied, it prevents desiccation of the embryo. So this is the first extraembryonic membrane of the fetus. Then comes the second membrane, that is the yolk sac. This membrane plays the role of providing nutrition in birds and reptiles in case of embryos. But in human beings, you know that there is no need of yolk sac. It is a source of stem cells that give rise to blood and lymphoid cells, and these stem cells, they later migrate into the developing embryo. And yolk sac, it is very small in human beings or human embryo, and it gradually degenerates and shrinks. So the second extraembryonic membrane, that is the yolk sac, it has a role, very good role in case of the embryo of the birds and reptiles, but in human beings it is not of much use because nutrition is provided through placenta, and but in case of human beings it is a source of stem cells which form blood and lymphoid cells. These stem cells, they give rise to blood and lymphoid cells, and these stem cells, they later go to the developing embryo inside the body of the embryo. And yolk sac, it is very small in human beings, and gradually it degenerates and it is vanished, it shrinks. And this is the second extraembryonic membrane of the human fetus. And the next is the chorion, and the part of chorion in contact with endometrium, it produces chorionic villi which form a part of the placenta. I have already told you that what is the function of the chorion, and this is the third extraembryonic membrane of the embryo. And chorion part, it takes part in the formation of the placenta in the endometrium, and so it forms chorionic villi and it forms the some part of the placenta. Then next are the fourth extraembryonic membrane of the placenta. It is the allantois. Allantois, it forms the blood vessels which run between the fetus and the uterus wall in umbilical cord. I told you that in umbilical cord there are blood vessels, and so allantois, it forms the blood vessels. Which blood vessels? Which run between the fetus and the uterus wall in the umbilical cord. So we have four extraembryonic membranes. Now allantois comes in contact with chorion, and where it forms a richly vascular structure that is known as the allantochorion, that forms the fetal part of the placenta. And allantois and chorion, they come in contact at certain point, and which is highly vascular, means it has blood vessels, and that portion is known as the allantochorion, which forms the fetal portion of the placenta. So we can say that this is the allantochorion portion which forms the fetal part of the placenta. So since both chorion and allantois take part in formation of placenta, so human placenta, it is known as chorioallantoic placenta. So I have told you that chorion forms the part of the placenta on the fetal side, and allantois also takes part in the formation of placenta. So we can say that human placental is also known as the chorioallantoid placenta, and which helps as a temporary connection between the mother and the fetus. Now this is the diagram showing human embryo with extra embryonic membranes. I told you that there are 4 extra embryonic membranes surrounding the embryo. This is embryo, and the closest extra embryonic membrane, this is amnion. So this is the amnion membrane, and the cavity between the embryo and the amnion, this is known as the amniotic cavity, and it has amniotic fluid. So this is the first extra embryonic membrane, and the second one is yolk sac. This is yolk sac, which is very small in human beings, and in later stages it is vanished or it shrinks, and this is the second, and it forms the stem cells which later migrates into the embryo. And the third one is this is chorion. So this is the third membrane, extra embryonic membrane. This is known as the chorion portion, and this is chorion membrane, and from here chorionic villi arise which go into the endometrium of the uterus. And the fourth extra embryonic membrane, this is the allantois, which help in support with the chorion, it forms the placental portion of the human beings. So these are the 4 extra embryonic membranes which surround the growing embryo. So after formation of placenta, umbilical cord, and surrounded by these extra embryonic membranes, the next process in the development from zygote to embryo, and that is the gastrulation. And what happens in gastrulation? That the inner cell mass of blastocyst, it undergoes various cell movements, and as a result of which they get arranged into 3 distinct layers. They are called as the primary germ layers, and in this case the gastrula is formed, and it marks the beginning of differentiation of the tissues. And the 3 germ layers, they are the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, which give rise to specific organs and systems. And each primary layer, primary germ layer, it is formed in a proper way. It means you know that the structure of blastocyst, it is that it is surrounded by a layer known as the trophoblast, and at one pole of the blastocyst there is inner cell mass. Now what happens that the inner cell mass, it undergoes certain changes, that the cells of the inner cell mass, they have some movements, and as a result of movements, these cells, they arrange themselves in 3 distinct layers. And you know that the high animals, they are triploblastic, and you must have studied in 11th class that we are triploblastic. Triploblastic means we originate from 3 germ layers, and this is in case of human beings, 3 germ layers are formed, and these germ layers are called as the primary germ layers. And when 3 germ layers, they are the ectoderm, which is the outermost germ layer, and middle one is mesoderm, and innermost is endoderm. And when these 3 primary germ layers are formed, this structure is known as the gastrula. Now I will tell you that how from the inner cell mass of the blastocyst these germ layers are formed. First of all, there is a formation of the endoderm, and you know endoderm, it is the innermost primary germ layer. When blastocyst enlarges, some of the cells from the inner cell mass, they get detached and they are pushed into the blastocoel, and these are the first endodermal cells. Then these cells, they divide rapidly and form a complete layer inside the trophoblast layer, and the embryo takes the shape of the tube, which is now lined by endodermal cells, and this tube is called as the primitive gut, and which later differentiates into two regions. It means when blastocyst enlarges, the cells of the inner cell mass, they are separated and they go inside the blastocele, which is the cavity of the blastocyst. And these cells, they are the first cells which form the endoderm, which is the innermost primary germ layer. These cells, they divide rapidly and they form a complete layer inside the trophoblast layer. And this layer, it takes the form of a tube, and this tube, it is known as a primitive gut, and gut ultimately forms the alimentary canal. And this primitive gut, it differentiates into two regions. And these two regions are, that is, one part within the embryo, it forms the gut tract of the embryo, and the second part is called as the yolk sac. So it has two parts. One part, it is within the embryo, which forms the primitive gut or the gut tract of the embryo, and second part is known as the yolk sac, and it communicates with the gut region. It means that the second part has the communication with the primitive gut, and the remaining cells of the inner cell mass after the integration of endodermal cells, they are known as the embryonic disc. And on one side the embryonic disc, there is cephalic margin, and on the other side is the caudal margin. It means that when endoderm is formed, some of the cells, they are remaining in the inner cell mass, and those remaining inner cell mass cells, they form the embryonic disc. And embryonic disc has two portions. One portion is known as the cephalic margin. Cephalic means head, and this is a head margin, and the other side, it is the caudal margin. Caudal means tail. So we can say that the remaining cells after formation of the endoderm layer, remaining cells of the inner cell mass, they form the embryonic disc. Now this is the diagram which show the formation of the innermost primary germ layer, that is the endoderm. Suppose this is the part of the trophoblast. This is trophoblast layer, and this is inner cell mass. Some cells, they are detached from this inner cell mass, and then they divide. This is blastocyst, this is inner cell mass, and some cells, they are getting detached. And now what happens, that these separated inner mass cells, they divide and they try to form a layer, and in this way, this is in the process of formation of endoderm layer, and here it forms the complete endoderm layer. This is a portion of the blastocyst, and this is a complete portion. So in this way, it takes the shape of the primary gut. This is the complete tube, and this is the endoderm layer, and outside is the trophoblast layer, and the cavity inside the tube, it is known as the primary gut. Now till now we have only one primary germ layer, that is the innermost germ layer, and that is known as the endoderm. And now next layer, which is the middle primary germ layer, that is known as the mesoderm. And how mesoderm is formed? It starts after the complete formation of the endoderm layer. The cells of the caudal margin of the embryonic disc, they divide rapidly, increase in thickness, and then get detached. These cells are mesodermal cells, which form a distinct layer just above the endodermal cells. It means that after the formation of the endoderm, the remaining cells, I told you, they form the embryonic disc, and one side is the caudal margin. Caudal means tail, and on the side of the caudal margin of the embryonic disc, the cells, they divide rapidly, they increase in thickness, then they become separated, and then they form a complete layer outside the endoderm, and it is also a distinct layer, and it is above the endoderm or outside the endoderm, and this layer is known as the mesoderm. Then there is a formation of the ectoderm, which is the outermost primary germ layer. And now the remaining cells of the embryonic disc, after the formation of mesoderm and the endoderm, they spread out and they form the outer layer which is known as the ectoderm. So what happens that when endoderm is formed and mesoderm is formed, then some cells are remaining in the embryonic disc. They spread out and they form a layer, complete layer, and that is they form the ectoderm layer, and this is outermost layer, and this is the first primary germ layer. So now we have three primary germ layers. Outermost is ectoderm, middle one is mesoderm, and innermost is endoderm. These three germ layers, they become distinct during gastrulation. Now you have seen that this is the process of gastrulation going on, and in this all the three germ layers, ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm, they are formed, and the cell groups in various germ cells, they move in an orderly fashion and with unique accuracy, and they are destined to form specific organs. Though the cells look alike, but their fate is different, and changes in the shape of the cells in various germ layers give the shape of the organism. It means that after the formation of the three germ layers, these three germ layers, they are responsible for the formation of the complete organism, and all the cells of these germ layers, they look alike, but their fate is different. It means each cell and each layer, it is destined to form certain particular organs and systems, and these germ layers, they give shape to the organisms, and afterwards all the organs and systems are formed from these three germ layers. So this is the formation of the endoderm and ectoderm and mesoderm. I have already told you about the endoderm. So this is embryonic disc, this is cephalic region, and this is the caudal region. First of all, from the caudal region, these cells of the inner cell mass, they get detached and they become thick and they form a complete layer. So afterwards, these cells, they form the mesoderm, and the remaining cells of the cephalic disc and the caudal disc, they form the outermost layer which is known as the ectoderm. And in this way, all the three layers, ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm, they are formed, and these primary germ layers, they are responsible for the formation of all the organs and systems in the organism. So this is all about the different primary germ layers. These are ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm, and now these three layers will form the complete individual with organs and system. And now in our next presentation, we will study that how these different organs and systems, they are formed after the formation of the primary germ cells. A primary germ layer, they are ectoderm, endoderm and mesoderm, and now we have ectoderm, mesoderm and endoderm, these three germ layers which form the future organism, and these cells are alike but they form the different types of organs and systems which function in a complete individual. So this is all about today's presentation. You have to go through this presentation, and you have to come with doubts on the WhatsApp group. Thank you.